Hey, welcome to the second course video for the title track from the album from Sleep Token called Even in Arcadia. I'm musically malnourished, and you're on my journey to go deep and wide in discovering new music and artists. In these videos, we do a deep dive into the lyrics and meaning behind the music. So, obviously being the title track, I think it's good to remind ourselves of really what the reference Even in Arcadia is. And it is this idea, et in Arcadia ego, which translates loosely to even in Arcadia, there am I. Arcadia being this place that is an Eden-like place, a utopia, a place of ascendance, a place that's meant to be carefree. But the idea is, even in that place, death still is there. I think for this song, it's the idea of recognizing this ascension in their career, as well as probably within his own life. He seems to have made some progress from some of the things that were talked about in the previous albums. And of course, that's backed up by things like emergence. But then we also see the toll that is paid, that as he has ascended in his career, in life, maybe even in mental health, the recognition that some of those pitfalls, some of those difficulties, the anxieties, the fears, the struggles, they're still there. And that is just the case of life. And so I think it's important reminding ourselves of that going into this. And so let's hop in now and look at this kind of line by line. All right, verse 1. Come now, swing wide those gates, 'cause I have paid my penance kindly, well in time for judgment day. Somehow I knew my fate. Turns out the gods we thought were dying were just sharpening their blades. Now, we have had mention of gates in the album earlier, this idea of fire to the gates, setting fire to the gates. And so this could be reference to some sort of gates within Arcadia. It could be going beyond that. It's hard to maybe separate that from the ideas of gates in Arcadia because the song title is Even in Arcadia. So maybe it has to do just with this idea of an arrival at some point within Arcadia, gates entering paradise. Now, it could be more of like a heavenly gates. And I get the feeling that even with some of the later lyrics, there is almost this tie-in with Arcadia being kind of like a heaven, because he talks about this idea of ascending, of angels' wings, things like that. So I think it's kind of one and the same. The entering of gates is used biblically a lot of time as heaven's gates. There's even a scripture, like an Old Testament scripture, that says, swing wide those gates, swing wide those heavenly gates. Let the King of Glory in. Now, I'm not calling Vessel the King of Glory, but that idea of swinging wide those gates. And he does come in, pretty strong in verse 2, this idea of being the final dawn, being the flood. And so maybe he's making some connection there. But the idea is like swing wide those gates because he feels like I've paid my penance kindly well in time for judgment day. I think it's the idea that he feels like he's either walked through enough difficulty or that he's done the work to maybe better or improve himself. Penance is often used, from my understanding, more in the Catholic faith around like certain acts that you do like after confessing sin. It's not something, at least from my biblical standpoint, that, Ephesians says we're saved by grace through faith. This is not of your works, so that no man can boast. The idea is so that you can't stand before God and be like, well, look at all the like things I did. I really love the idea more like forgiveness is offered freely. And so, but I think he's just trying to say like he's walked through some things, he's done some things, he's been through some difficulty, and he feels like he now can stand in judgment, maybe without the judgment. So, and again, even in Arcadia, the idea of being like there's still difficulty or death or struggle in this place of ascension, I think he's also just trying to say, like, I've paid my dues, if we could boil that down. But now he comes into this place. Somehow I knew my fate. So maybe the idea that, like, again, he was going to face certain things, even though maybe he thought he was past it or was hoping he was past it, but yet in the back of his mind, he knew what his fate would be. This line is really cool. Turns out the gods we thought were dying were just sharpening their blades. So if you could put this in the picture of his career and his own maybe personal life, is this idea that maybe for a season, things were very different. He wasn't having to deal with some of the struggles he was dealing with previously, thought that he had made it into Arcadia, and this would be a place of like complete freedom. And especially from a professional standpoint, and we've talked about this in previous videos, is that you might think, oh, if I could like get an album out, that'd be the best thing. I would have made it. Oh, if I could headline a concert, I would have made it. If I could earn X amount of dollars, I would have made it. And oftentimes people reach those goals and find that, oh, maybe this isn't everything I thought it would be. And so this idea that it seems, at least for a season, a time, there was this peace. The gods we thought were dying. And from previous albums, in ways in which Vessel has talked about this idea of gods, I think that it's from this side of these outside forces working against him. I feel like that's how he's using this. And so maybe the struggles that he faces are like the gods at work. Thought that they were dying, but turns out they were just sharpening their blades. They were getting ready for war. They were getting ready to come back with a vengeance. Have you been waiting long for me? Now, trying to figure out this part of the song, I just feel like, again, it is that idea that there was a time of peace, a time where he thought he had moved past some things, especially on the tail end of thinking the gods were dying, but realizing they were just waiting for him, and that he's about to face them again, or has faced them again, telling this maybe in retrospect. But if you have a different thought on this, let me know. Now here I was trying to figure out if he was switching perspectives, but I don't think so. I think he is saying these things. I am the final dawn, which would mean like the final day, essentially. And this does carry over. I am the flood. Obviously, if you're talking about maybe the flood from the book of Exodus, the event that would nearly end the world, that could make sense. This final dawn, the final day, I am the flood. And what was missing from those scriptures will be written in my blood. I was trying to figure out if there's probably a connection to Emergence, where he talks about being written in verse. Not certain. So if you have any insight on that, let me know. Dig down into the mud. Oh, but I guess with this, the idea is that he's understanding, these gods that were sharpening their blades, like what's getting ready to happen, or again, what has happened is that he's finding this bloodshed again. He's facing these battles. Dig down into the mud, which I think sets up this next line, right? Is maybe the idea that he's digging down into the mud, maybe in this battle, or just this idea of feeling low down in the muck and mire. Even the book of Psalms talks about God lifting us out of the muck and the mire, setting our feet on a solid place, on a firm foundation. But that idea of being in the muck and in the mire, being in the mud, is just this place of lowness, this place of being stuck. So I don't know why it would say dig down into the mud, or if it's that idea of going to battle and he's kind of set his feet and he's dug down in. I don't know. Let me know. But the idea of getting low versus this, what good is all this talk of wings when there's nothing left above? Maybe this feeling that He feels like he's reached the top and it's not what he was wanting and there's nowhere else to go. The repeated chorus, have you been waiting long for me? Verse 3, no matter how we feel, we've got a taste for one another and a few good years to kill. No matter what is real, it seems that even in Arcadia, you walk beside me still. And I feel like this is just this idea of like not being able to let go. I don't feel like it fully goes back to the idea of a toxic relationship. There's a possibility, but I really feel like it is that sticking with that theme of death still being in Arcadia and death being those struggles, those vices. And so the recognition that like, I don't necessarily want it here, but it is here and we're going to battle. We have a taste for one another and a few good years to kill. So the recognition that we're going to keep fighting this battle. You're going to keep trying to bite me and I'm going to bite back. This is an epic line though, that even in Arcadia, you walk beside me still. And then the repeated chorus. And my goodness, that section in the song where he yells that out. Gosh, dude. So like, it sounds almost, it gives me this idea of like having set, whether two swords or a sword and a shield and just yelling back. Really intense. Very cool song. Would love to know your thoughts on it. So let me know in the comments. Thanks for being with me for this one. Hope to see you in the next one. It's reading good.